Welcome to ThursdAI for July 30th. This is Alex Volkov back in the studio. Yo, so happy to be back. There's so much news to cover from AI. I'm very, very happy to be back here to talk to you all on the live stream, as we've been doing for the past 3.5 years, about everything that happened in the world of AI this week. A big, big week for open source. We're going to cover the most important open source release, obviously, Kimi K3, with a few guests on the show. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to talk about all the guests. Fraxis asking me how was my holiday. My holiday was incredible. It was Fable powered. Believe it or not, I did try to disconnect, but also try to like Fable Max from a remote location. Claude Fable helped me plan all of it. We also went every day to different places. Obviously, I sent like an iCloud photos link of every day back to Claude and asked it to create a video summary recap of what we did that day. And so it had the context of what we planned. And then it also, I asked it to look at the timestamps of every picture, look at every picture also with vision. And every video I ran through Gemini, because Gemini is still, to me, the most multimodal video understanding model. Meta is not too bad also. And stitched together a very beautiful HyperFrames video. And it did so incredibly. So now I have video recaps of every day. I'm not going to post them because they have my kids and I don't really want that out there. But if you don't know HyperFrames yet, we're going to bring them to the show, I think. The intro to the show and all the new transitions that you may have seen last week are also HyperFrames generated with Fable. AI agents are great at making videos. So this is how my vacation was. I agree with Milos. We're definitely looking forward to some breaking news today. I'm looking forward to talking about some new stuff. Codex is supposed to come back with some Codex Thursdays, I think they call them. And we have to talk about the letters, folks. We have to talk about the letters because there has been so many letters this week that I lost count. I was very happy to be back so that I have a reason to make sense of all the open letters that were posted. So we're going to definitely talk about the fact that Jensen Huang is now on Twitter and posting banger after banger. Let me add Peter here. Peter Gostev from Marina. Welcome, Peter. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome back.
So Max from Pangram is going to talk about to us about Pangram 4 and their new image model as well. And so I'm down to Peter. If you're gonna go and take a picture, snap a picture of your art, I'm down to test this out with that. And we'll also say hi to Yam Peleg. Yam, welcome. We'll have two guests on the show in just a few minutes, folks. We'll have Elie Bakouch coming back to us, previously from Hugging Face, and now he's working at Prime Intellect. And we'll have a friend of the show, Philip Kiely for Base 10, the author of the Inference book. Both of them are going to help us cover Kimi K3, which is I'm super, super excited about, which is the biggest news this week. So I think that's going to be... You know what? No, that's not mine. You know what mine is from this whole time that I was out? Two things. The new voice live in Codex and this guy. The Codex micro keyboard that has a big ass button, as you guys can see there, that you can click it, you can talk to your computer. This is insane. This has changed how I use AI like almost entirely. And I still have some gripes about this, but this is now me talking to my computer doing stuff versus me typing to my computer doing stuff. It's kind of crazy.
And
So that's mine.
when you click it, does it launch like the new voice mode, or is it like a kind of push to talk?
You choose which one. Peter, how about you?
I did try the voice mode, and I don't wanna be negative about it because I know people are excited about it, but I don't know, I kind of hate it. It's like, I think, first of all, I tried it on Codex, and I don't know what I did, but I talked to it on my phone, and I just said, "Oh, take a look at this," and I normally have the flow, or have a look at this, and then launch new thread, and then to do a chart or something. And what when I came back to my desk, I just saw about 30 charts started, and so it like somehow launched just like 30 chats doing God knows what. And it's just, what the hell happened? So I was a bit like, I don't know. Then also, I do like some things about it. Like, I think it was quite competent at helping me like summarize. Like, I was talking through a presentation and trying to think it through in my head, and it did help me that pretty well. And I think, by the way, as a side note, GPT models like terrible at writing, just like helped me write this. But this model was excellent at writing. I thought like only one or two examples, so not like big proclamation, but it really felt, oh wow, that's actually like way better than what I would have written. And by writing, I mean like saying it out loud in a way that could be.
Do you know which model though? The live model, right? The GPT live model.
Yeah, the live, yeah. It just feels like much more human, tuned towards humans. So that was nice. So like I appreciated that. But yeah, it's like it's still superficial and it does all of this like human-like things, but it just feels like it's like a veneer of all being, oh, I'm so human, and then it's like doesn't know what it's saying. So like I don't like that combination.
You still have the uncanny valley feeling about this.
Yeah, it's like I don't mind if it's that like human-like and it's like super smart, but if it's human-like and dumb, then like I don't like that.
Alrighty. Jan, what about you? What is your big thing from this week? And please be brief. We have two guests that are coming on the show and we want to do a TLD just before that, just to tell people like everything that happened.
Jensen dropping bangers on X.com
just
for the
crazy.
first time, like just joining X.com. First tweet, like open source all the way, open weights all the way, and then the response. It was a nice week. Let's just say it like that. It was an interesting week. Yeah.
X is having a big moment right now with Jensen joining Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg liked my post, folks. I'm so happy. I saw this. Like, what? That makes no sense because he wasn't on Twitter for the longest time, and now he's also dropping bangers. It's like Twitter is back, and Jensen is absolutely back on X posting bangers. We're gonna talk about this. There's a few open letters floating in the air. And we need to make sense of all the open letters, folks. So we will definitely do that. But before this, we'll say hi to our next guests, and then we'll jump into TLDR, and then we'll start talking about open source. So welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. Both of you folks have been here before. Elie, Bakouch, Elie or Elie? How do you pronounce this? Let me know, please.
It is fine.
But how do you say
Elie?
Elie, research at Prime Intellect. Last time you were on the show, you were still at Hugging Face, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Nice. So congrats on the move. We don't do cards here like TVPN does, but we definitely congratulate our folks. And we know and love Prime Intellect. We had many folks on the show throughout the days. And also back on the show, Philip Kiely, author of Inference Engineering at Base 10, Dev Experience at Base 10. Is that the right way to say that?
I like to say that my job is creating shareholder value at Base 10.
Creating shareholder value. So we're going to talk about some shareholder value that you guys created this week for sure. So welcome back to the show, folks. And obviously we have Nistan back. Nistan, welcome with the beard. All right, folks. It's time for us to jump into the TLDR. Alrighty, for July 30th, this is the TLDR. This is everything that we're going to cover on the show, everything important that happened in the world of AI. And obviously, we're going to kick off with open source, literally the biggest model that we've ever seen open source came out this week. Moonshot released Kimi K3. Full checkpoints. Previously, it was just an API launch. Now there's full checkpoints, model code. There's a custom license we have to talk about. 2.8 trillion parameters total with 104 billion parameters active. So that's a trillion to billion combo. I don't remember we've seen a trillion to billion combo in terms of like MOE plus active with a bunch of routed experts. We're going to talk about this. KDA, attention. We have folks here to cover all of this. That's 2 terabytes of a download almost, which is crazy. Open weight, but not fully open source. We're going to mention that as well. There's a few other open source things that we just mentioned. We're not going to cover them. Cat Coder 2.5 released, Solar Open 2 released, and Apertus 1.5 also. But K3 definitely dominated this open source week. And then we're going to talk about the letters. Anthropic launches Opus 5, a day after ThursdAI, just a day after ThursdAI. Peter, I know you've been all up on Opus 5, posting incredible demos, incredible like 3D things. People are building games. end to end with it, with gauntlet prompts from Matt Schumer. So we're going to talk about Opus 5. They claim it's a new state-of-the-art model. They comes very, very close to Fable on coding at half the price. So Opus 5 has been out for a minute. There's a thing with ARC-AGI that we must talk about. Opus came out very hot at ARC-AGI 3, saying that it's 3x higher than the next best model. And then today, OpenAI folks decided that no, the way ARC-AGI was tested did not make use the best abilities of their model. So maybe we can cover that, because I think it's also important. And I think that this is most of the big labs and big, most interesting things. There's one more thing, Peter, that you mentioned that we must talk about, that Codex Soul, I think it was Soul, helped improve its own inference and runtime. We'll mention that as well. Please remind me afterwards. There's also a big week in voice and audio, folks, because OpenAI launched something new called GPT Live Transcribe and also GPT Transcribe. So 2 separate models for transcription. Maybe you can run them on air, very, very cheap. Keywords, language hints, contexts, and previous turns for... We should test this out. Grok also punched back with Grok Voice Think Fast, which is their version of reasoning and voicing, etc. And then also Quen Audio 3 launched, and Lyria 3.5 in Google launched this week as well. Let's see what else. Microsoft. No, this is old. Microsoft came out with a cyber thing, so we're going to talk about that. And I think the most interesting thing from AI coding and agents was that MCP moved forward with MCP version 2, which is stateless protocol, remove sessions and handshakes and make it much, much easier. And MCP is kind of not going anywhere. And I think this is what I talked about. Zuckerberg published an op-ed called The AI Future is for Everyone, which I think is very important to read through. This is the biggest news of AI this week. Most of them we're going to try to cover before we start with open source. Just before we go to open source, folks, anything else big, important from this week that this did not include that we must add? As an open question to everyone, including the listeners to the show, including the hosts and the guests on stage. And the last thing is Pangram. Also, folks who've been on the pod before have released Pangram version 4. It includes image verification, whether or not images were created with AI, but also a new and updated version of their model. Max from Pangram is going to join us at the end of the show to talk about their updated model, their research, and kind of facing the responses from folks. Also, they integrated with Substack, so that's incredible to see. All right, I think it's time for us to go, to not keep our guests waiting too much. Let's go to open source. Open source AI, let's get it started. Alrighty, let's get it started, folks. This week has been a huge one, and by huge I mean in terabytes and and just like physical weight as well, because Moonshot released a state-of-the-art open source, probably the king of open source, probably the best model, Kimi K3. We all remember Kimi K2, Kimi K2.5, great models, and this week we got a nearly a 3 terabyte, no, a 2 terabyte, but like 3 T total parameters and 104 billion active parameter model MOE. To help me cover this, we have Elie here and Philip. Philip, you guys were day 0 supporters of this model. We're still working at CoreWeave to be 0-day supporters of models. I would love to have you here to represent kind of the inference side. Elie, you're known for breaking down technical reports and doing long threads and that people love. So I will maybe start with just covering a bit of the evals of this model before we go into this. Peter, would love to hear from you as well, because this model is breaking design arena. This model takes number 1 by a big margin as well. So let's go through the evals a little bit, but also we'll just talk about what's cool about this, and feel free to dive in as much as possible. So we have 896 experts in this model with 16 routed to native vision. So it's multimodal fully, unlike previous big models. I would love to hear about KDA and attention residual stuff. And we have a 1 million context window, which I assume is not cheap to run with this model given its insane size. Reactions, folks. Philip and Elie, feel free to jump in here.
I think this model is super impressive. It's the first time we have a model at this scale in the open. Even, for instance, if we compare to closed source model from big labs, Grok 4.5 is 1.5 trillion, which is like almost half of Kimi K3, which is crazy to say, right? And obviously, to train such a big model, you need to make some choices in the architecture that make it good at inference. And I think that's like the main point of the model. The focus is making it possible to do inference on this model with long context, with KDA and so on that we can deep dive in a bit later. And also having a stable training with things like attention residuals, kind of like this thing that they do for Muon. They also do some clipping to have stable activation and so on. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. And I think what's even more impressive is like how they managed to scale their pre-training recipe from Kimi K3 to from Kimi K2 to Kimi K3. It's like a 2.5x scaling efficiency, which is very, very impressive. It means like at the same compute, they basically get 2.5x performance for the same compute, which is super impressive, right? Yeah.
Yep. I think that just the scale is how should I say? The scale is the story here. It feels like the scale is the story. The fact that we got this as open weights, I think, is incredible. Not all of us got this as open weights. I feel like we have to talk about the license as well. This is not a standard fully MIT license. There is a reason why not everybody has it yet, but folks are working on this. But the scale is the story here. And what does it take to host such a model? Philip, would love to hear from you. You posted about this publicly. Let's just talk about the number of GPUs required. Just out of the bat, like how to even scale this responsibly.
Yeah, so the first thing to understand about a model like this and trying to get it up and running is that it's not explicitly designed for NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs because these labs are not running on these. So if you read the technical report, they talk a lot about really wide expert parallelism, the idea that you're going to have dozens and dozens of GPUs and you're going to split the model across that and think about how to do a lot of expert routing over a very sparse set of experts in order to have efficient inference. We obviously have different hardware and different constraints in that we are serving on NVIDIA Blackwell. We're serving on GB300s. The reason that you want the 300s is because of the VRAM amount, obviously with 2.8 trillion parameters, even in the native MXFP4 weights, you need about 1.5 terabytes of VRAM simply to load the thing. Then you need quite a bit of space for KV cache, especially given the million token context window.
Yeah.
So there's quite a bit of challenge in, first off, simply adapting the new architecture to the GPUs. We were fortunate to work closely with the teams behind VLLM and SGLang on understanding the front end, understanding the input and output formats, the new KDA, the latent MOE, like understanding all this stuff, working on kernels together. And we're able to make a couple contributions back to open source as well as part of that process, which definitely felt good.
Nice. First of all, shout out to you guys for like day zero support for this, and folks definitely should try out Base 10 via OpenRoute or directly. But also, I do want to ask you guys someone to explain MX FP4 versus NV FP4. I think there's a difference. Please explain to me like a full dummy that does not understand this at all. Philip, I think you can take this a stab at this.
So NVFP4, the NV stands for NVIDIA.
Yeah.
And it's specific to the Blackwell GPUs. So if you look at, for example, a Nemotron model, it's often going to come in native NVFP4 weights because NVIDIA is training it. They're targeting their own hardware. MXFP4 is a more general 4-bit floating point format that is supported on a wide range of hardwares. It's a more like open industry standard. There's slight differences between the two. They're both something called microscaling formats, which means that you are quantizing like very small blocks at a time. To my knowledge, MXFP4, your block size is 32, whereas NVFP4, your block size is 16. In NVFP4, you also have a second scaling factor, which is a 32-bit number. That's going to be a blockwise or a tensor size scaling factor. The reason that you can have in NVFP4 smaller block sizes and the second factor without really hurting your performance too much is because the Blackwell GPUs are like physically built for this exact number format, which is why the MXFP4 is a more general format, because it doesn't assume this like very specific capability of the hardware, and it still allows for quite a bit of preservation of dynamic range through microscaling in this 4-bit format. And then, of course, given that we're doing quantization-aware training, or not we're doing, given that the lab is doing quantization-aware training, you're not really seeing any sort of quality loss for going to 4 bits because the model natively is 4 bits.
And it's at almost 2 terabytes of just weights. Even in
about 1.5 terabytes.
Even at FP4 format. Elie, I want to talk about their attention stuff, like KDA, and you mentioned Muon as well. We talked about Muon like a couple of times before.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that most of the stuff that the Kimi K3 use were already in the open previously. If you look at KDA, so which is the linear attention used by Kimi, they published a paper about it previously, and it's also very similar to the attention that Quen used, which is called gate delta net attention. If you look at latent MOE, it's work from NVIDIA. If you look at attention residual, it's also something that they published before. So basically, every part of the stack were already in the open, and like the Go of Muon as well were already in the open, and they use the exact same formulation as GLM 5.2, which is the per head Muon. And yeah, it's quite interesting to see that like they basically take those building blocks of things that they did in the past. For instance, the people working on linear attention also contribute to Flash FLA, which is the linear attention library. And they just scaled it to 1 trillion. Sorry, not 1 trillion, but 3 trillion. So yeah, and the points. So maybe I can talk about a few points here. The point of attention is that the big issue when you do long context is that your KV cache is growing super fast, right? And the point of linear attention is that you don't have a KV cache, you have a fixed state matrix that basically don't go with the number of tokens that you do inference on, right? So this is good for decoding, and the prefill is also a bit faster. It's a different format. It's actually quite complex to understand, and there is a lot of optimization there. But you also get faster performance of prefill, and yeah, obviously the big win is this fixed state KV cache, which is basically compressing the KV cache into one state matrix, which is smaller. But this is also fun because like this lead to, I didn't see any issue with provider yet, but I'm expecting some issue because, for instance, when you do when you have the state matrix, if you want to rewind in Claude Code or those harness, you have the option to rewind, right? And this is basically taking your previous KV cache token. You cannot do that with state matrix because the state matrix, you basically need to store each checkpoint of the state matrix. So I'm expecting some fun stuff here that might happen in the next few days in terms of input caching with linear attention, which is not as trivial as full attention. Yeah. And also maybe one super cool innovation is their thing called attention residual, which is basically doing attention on the residual path of the model. And this is super important because, for instance, if you take a deep layer in the model, to get the information of a previous layer, basically you have to carry this information through the residual path. And with attention residual, you basically don't do this, but you let the opportunity of the deep layer to attend to the residual of the previous layer, which is very beautiful in a way and quite simple. So obviously there is some infra optimization that they do. They do this method called block attention residual, which is just basically taking the residual of it's a sliding window of attention residual. So yeah, it's very nice method to have a very good information flow into the model. And I think those methods like make even more sense when your model is as deep as Kimi K3 is.
Yeah. When you say deep, you just mean like in terms of like just number of layers?
Yeah, exactly. Number of layers. Yeah.
Last question, not last one for you, like another question for you. I read very briefly the technical report, was on vacation, but like it was very, very interesting. They don't use yarn or rope. They use something called nope.
No.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So basically, when you do model training, often you use this thing called ROB to take into account the position of the previous token. What they don't do this because they use linear attention that basically have this recency bias into the linear attention mechanism, and they don't use ROB in the full layer, which is something that they ablate in the Kimi linear paper. There is an ablation about it, and they find that it's a bit better. And it's actually quite nice because the intuition behind it is that they let the linear attention layer focus on like local information, and they have this global layer, which is like the MLA part, gated MLA, which doesn't have any information about the recency of the token or about the position. It's really like a global layer that just take every token the same way. There is no bias here. So it's actually quite nice. And like this NOPE thing, so NOPE just stands for no positional encoding. Is coming from like a bunch of people. When we train small M3, we also use that, for instance. And we also did rope only on a few layers to let some layer focus on locality and some other layer focus on globality.
Thank you, Elie. I just want to shout out this beautiful visualization from Niston and Fable, I think. I don't know, Niston, was this Fable? Of the layers and of Kimi.
Yeah. It allows you, I just put it so that the volume of it corresponds to the actual size in megabytes. And with the other models, it was fine, but with Kimi, it just gets so messy because it's so big. But yeah, I just gave it the config.json from Hugging Face. And that told it to also explain what the Kimi attention is, and you can also see the MLP layers on top, which are like the MTP layers, which are like the look-ahead decoding.
So we'll definitely go ahead and share this link on the show notes so people can play around, and like people who are interested in this scale and size of models. Philip, let's talk about inferencing this beast.
Yeah, the first thing to understand is that like we've been here before as an industry. DeepSeek R1 came out, and it was 671 billion parameters in like January 2025. And we were all sitting around looking at it and looking at our H100s and looking at the model and being like, well, how the hell are we supposed to do this? And we tried a bunch of stuff. We tried multi-node inference. Turns out that doesn't work super well. At least didn't work back then. I guess technically we're doing multi-node on GB300, but because of NVL72, you don't have the same restrictions of an InfiniBand to interconnect. But anyway, like there's been, and then Kimi K2 came out. That was 1 trillion. We'd never seen 1 trillion before. So it's not the first time that a new model has come out at a sort of size and architectural complexity that it forces the entire industry to take a couple big steps forward and do a month or two worth of progress in a weekend. I think that the big things around this model are primarily around throughput. I think obviously there's all the things you can do for latency, right? You can build the speculator, you can make sure that you're doing great cache-aware routing so that you just get prefill as much as possible. You can set your batch size smaller and you mess with your parallelism config until you have a latency tuned config. Like all that's kind of standard. The really interesting problem, in my opinion, with this new model and this new size is making throughput exceptional so that we can serve as many tokens as possible. Some big levers for that are disaggregation. I'm actually doing a talk with NVIDIA at their Dynamo Day later today, where we're going to talk about some disaggregation results from GLM 5.2. But yeah, you basically want to separate out prefill and decode onto different workers so that they're not feeling with each other. And for bigger and bigger models, this becomes more and more important. And then the other bit is if you have a model like this and you are serving it across multiple cloud providers, multiple regions, you want to make sure that you are routing everything appropriately, because the number one thing that's going to determine your throughput and your cost is going to be your cache hit rate. That's like the whole game. And especially for models like this, where you're mostly doing multi-tone agents, you're mostly doing like coding and that kind of stuff, you expect very, very long input sequences with very high cache hit rates. But that actually introduces a new problem in the Tokenizer, which we published about, which I was I wouldn't say surprised, but I would say very happy to see so many people interested in such a sort of novel and niche part of the stack as a tokenizer. If you think about a long input sequence, hundreds of thousands up to 1 million tokens, and a very high cache hit rate where you've seen 99% of these tokens before in the last turn through this agent. As an inference engineer, I've always been able to assume that like tokenization time is negligible. But once you get your sequence that long, your tokenization time on a sort of base implementation can actually be hundreds of milliseconds. And your TTFT off a cache hit is also a few hundred milliseconds. Suddenly tokenization is half your total time. And so Michael, one of our engineers here at Base 10, who just absolutely loves going after really tough performance problems in really niche areas of the stack, created Base 10 Tokenizer, which I think is a fantastic name, and I won't hear otherwise, which is his sort of optimized implementation of a tokenizer for Kimi K3. Kimi K3, by the way, also introduces a bunch of new special behaviors that it expects the tokenizer to support around certain tokens like stop. We can see some of the performance metrics, and you can see how as the input sequence gets longer, the gains get bigger. And then if we scroll down, there's a third image in here that I'd like to see, or if you just hit the arrow, we'll see that third image. So we can see here how massively shrinking the tokenization time actually does like materially improve time to first token in this very niche case. That just so happens that for Kimi K3, we actually do see traffic that looks like this extreme case. So that's a great example of like, as engineers, we love to say it depends as the answer to every question.
Yes.
But the more and more you do inference, the more and more you can understand the sort of shapes of the traffic that you're getting, then you can deploy very, very targeted optimizations like this against certain like long tail behaviors that actually show up very often and build a system that just works better end to end.
Yeah. I think that's great. I do want to call out and maybe ask folks here on stage what your thoughts on this as well, because more and more, I think, Peter, we're moving away. We'll talk about this at the end of the show as well. We're moving away from just the completion of tokens. It's all agentic and it's all reasoning. It's all going back and forth. Niels Rogue, your previous coworker, I think, Elie, from Hugging Face, he posted this, and I really wanted to put this on stage because I think it's very important. Kimi was trained on preserved thinking history mode. For multi-tone conversation tool calls, Kimi K3 requires the complete assistant message returned by the API to be passed back to messages as is, including reasoning content and tool calls, not just content. This is very important. We saw this. Please remind me. Like another, I think it was Minimax folks who also said that return thinking is very important for the model performance. You guys want to discuss this for a little bit? Why this is so important and why like other harnesses that don't do this kind of miss out? Elie, I see you shaking your head. Like, can you tell us about returned reasoning, why it's important, why the model is trained?
So maybe like you will need to double check this, but I'm pretty sure that most of the model that are open source now, for instance, like GNM 5.2, Minimax, Kimi, use this kind of preserved thinking scheme. And like, it's very simple. I think it's just that during the reinforcement learning stage, the model use this kind of preserved thinking history mode. So if you suddenly like at inference don't use it, the model will just don't understand what's happening and just get very bad response. I think this is also one of the reasons why Codex perform better on ARC-AGI. Like the one of the reasons was about the preserved thinking as well. So it's super important. I think like there was a big issue at some point with entirely thinking with provider and so on, that like kind of lead to very bad quality for models. So yeah, like super important. And Kimi have this effort called like vendor verifier thing, where they basically test properly like that the number of tool calling, the number of output token match between their API and all the model is served on different providers. So this is kind of the source of truth of this kind of thing to detect if there is some issue like this.
So we actually talked about Kimi Vendor Verifier when Kimi 2.5 launched back, September of last year? If I'm not mistaken, September, October of last year. This is an effort by them, which is basically an eval that's held back, that nobody knows. There's like a few questions here, but basically the whole eval is held back. Philip, you'd be great to see that you guys are like very high up here I think, in terms of numbers. DeepSuite is TBD on base 10 in terms of Verifier. They're still testing this. When we need to also submit, but it looks like most of the folks now, at least on OCR bench, look like they're up to par, like with the 80-ish% of the scores. The reason why Kimi did this is because different providers hosted it differently and then didn't use the interleaved thinking thing that we just pointed about. And then people were complaining like, hey, this model came out with these like great evals, but I'm not getting these results. And people started complaining. And then even I think it led to OpenRouter adding some which provider does which quality and quantization like efforts, etc. So this is great to see that now like folks are working with Kimi closely and getting up to par with this model is served the same across everything else. Philip, would love to hear a comment on this.
I think Kimi Vendor Verifier is a great effort by the lab to create a public standard for what it means to run the model. When I think about quality in model, I don't think about the raw output. I think about the fidelity to the original vision of the model. How close is the thing I'm serving to a 100% pure expression of what the people who train the model wants it to do at any given time? And so I do think that as an industry, our quality discussion is substantially over-indexed on quantization because, as you can see here, everyone's running the same thing. It's a natively MXFP4 model. There's no benefit to quantizing it, and yet you can see varying quality. And that's because predominantly quality comes from the inference engine all the way down to the kernels. It comes from, are you fixing all the bugs and race conditions that exist throughout the stack? Are you implementing proper support for every single one of the quirky little behaviors of the model in your front end, in your parser? So I think that Kimi Vendor Verifier is a great effort. I would love to see more labs be explicit about verifying the correctness of public endpoints. And I think that it goes to show just the difficulty of doing really high quality inference, because it's actually a lot more than just like making sure that the logit distribution out of whatever quantization of your weights is reasonably well matched to the original model. There's a lot more that goes into it than that.
Yeah, 100%. I do want to talk about the performance of this model and what it is good for. Folks, we're getting like a nearly, and Philip and Peter, sorry, I want to tag you in here as well. We're getting in like a state-of-the-art huge model that's served in open weights, including the kind of the training recipe, etc. We don't know many things about the data that went in there. There's like speculation about some distillation accusations floating around with like Chinese labs. We've talked about this all on the show before. We're getting a state-of-the-art model in the open source on DeepSuite, which we talked about, which is the new Sui bench, let's call it DeepSuite from I think that curve, if I'm not mistaken. Kimi K3 is just behind Fable 5 and GPT-5.6. So beating GPT-5.5 and beating Opus 4.8 at 67%. On Terminal Bench 2.1, we don't have Wolfram here, so we didn't run from his own vacation, well-deserved vacation. We did not run Wolf Bench on Kimi K3, but we'll definitely do that once it's up. Kimi K3 on Terminal Bench, which we love and test plenty, in Terminal Bench 2.1, takes second place just behind Sol, beating Fable, beating Opus 4.8. I don't see Opus 5 here. It's because they released like within a day of each other, I think. So they probably didn't have tons of time to evaluate. Frontier, Sui, Kimi K3 gets like a very high score as well. And I think on Arena and Design Arena, like Kimi gets like incredible scores. Peter, would love to tag you in here to tell us about some performance here. What's going on? How is this model received? What's the quality compared to other models and other open source models?
Yeah, it's often the case when open source model comes out and then we see these big headlines and then we do more benchmarks and it kind of drops off the cliff a little bit. Like that happens so often. But here it doesn't seem to have happened. And we had our scores, I know you mentioned like a couple of hours we did, I'll just share my screen. We did Agent Arena. So this is like a few days old, so maybe the score's a little bit different if you go on the website. But the quality of the model, so it ranked fourth on the Arena. So this is just above like 5.5, just below GPT-5.6, below Fable. I think there were like a bunch of benchmarks that showing it like above Fable. There's probably not that I think is quite right. But yeah. Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Just before we continue, just 1 second. It looks like our great guest, folks. First of all, thank you so much. One of the coolest things that I get to do on ThursdAI is like deep dive, and I'm able to do that because like we're on the show. That's what's interesting to us. It's always great to deep dive with you guys. Elie, thank you so much for coming back. Philip, thank you so much for coming back for help us deep dive into open source and how this model is trained and how the sausage is made. Please welcome to come back and the next big release. I really appreciate your time here, folks. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah. Thanks. Always a pleasure. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers. All right, Peter. Let's go. So we're looking at the Arena agentic score, and this is the best open source on there for sure, or open weight. It's not fully open source.
Yeah. So it is the best. It's very close to the frontier. We are going to publish some more numbers on the kind of the cost curve of it. From memory, I should probably double check. But yes, it's close to the cost kind of parity frontier as well.
$3 per million token inputs and $15 per output. It's not a cheap model to serve. We can talk about the pricing thing now that like our folks have dropped. Nobody here signed anything with Kimi yet. Every model provider serves it at the same exact price. Well, if we go to OpenAI,
so this is something like I was kind of confused by, and I guess technically there is one that broke the ranks.
Yeah, Morph.
I don't know who they are, but yeah, they broke the ranks and dropped it. But yeah, their throughput is lower as well, so you can kind of see 13 tokens per second. Pretty terrible. Yeah, like to me, my expectation is the promise of open source, open weights is that weights out there, it's a popular model, then everyone does the things that our guest talked about and optimize all of this. Everyone like goes away, finds the best thing, best way to run it, and then they manage to drop the price or increase the throughput or something like that. And he's just like everything's the same. So I'm very confused. I know there's like a few tweaks. I think Dax posted saying, the price fixing is not cool. So I haven't seen anything. I don't know what the agreements are.
Here's what I'll say, given that I do work for CoreWeave and we are in the progress probably of putting this model up, we need to reach out. And I can talk publicly about what the stuff that are public. This license for Kimi is not MIT license. This is a Kimi K3 license specific. It's a version of MIT license with an exception for companies that host models. If the software is used for any of the licensee commercial products or services that have more than 100 million monthly active users or more than $20 million in monthly revenue, Kimi K3 must be prominently displayed, and a license, model as a service companies need to acquire a license from Kimi, which means working with them and signing a license. I haven't seen this license, so I'm very, very clearly I can like only speculate of what's in there. But when you're looking at every model that serves this model, every company that serves this model serving it at the same exact price, then it's fairly clear that hey, Kimi is trying to also make a lot of money on the public market, and the revenue sharing and price fixing, who are speculated by the creator of OpenCode Dax, is probably in there. We don't know. This is all speculation, but this is how the open weight thing turns. I also wanted to mention at this point of open weights, open source, like we've talked about open source, open weights, we love it. Thank you for folks for posting the technical blog, etc. There's now an iteration of how an open weights model appears in our lives. Taken from Mistral dropping a magnet link, hey, everybody, YOLO, take this model, run this, do whatever you want. Now, slowly, all the Chinese labs are first posting an API. They're saying, hey, we have this open source model, but here's our API. I don't think that I would use an API for Kimi versus an API for OpenAI, for example, just because I want to. I would prefer an OpenAI API, GPT-5.6, etc. And then they're saying, we're going to open source this in a week. Everybody get builds. This is a very standard flow now for everyone, for Minimax, for Kimi, for literally everyone. And now the model weights that drop is also, you have to sign an agreement with them. They want to make money. The whole, here's the benefit of open source, use it and take it for everything that you want, is kind of like getting augmented by capitalism. So I definitely noticed that with recent updates from models.
And maybe I'll just add one thing, is that the front-end performance seems to be really good. And the kind of the defaults of websites, for example, seem to be quite good. And that's a kind of thing we saw as well from GLM, that it just seems to be like pretty competent. If you say, build me a website, it just looks nice, which I must say wasn't the case with so many previous models or OpenAI models, for example, but was good for Claude models. And this is not a statement that they just still do something. I don't actually think that's true. They probably just work hard to make sure that the defaults are good.
Yeah. And you guys have tested this on the image to web dev arena, right? And Kimi K3 Max is now very close to the top, just behind Opus 5, which we're going to talk about next. Before I think we'll talk about letters, because I think, Peter, you did a lot of tests with Opus 5. Would love to chat about them as well. But yeah, the design capability of this model is quite something. At the price performance, I think this is the cheapest, best like visual model. I have to say, the way for me to test these models is, at least after vacation, I've used HyperFrames, which is a way for your models to create videos, beautiful videos like the transitions that you guys see here. And I was not impressed with Kimi. I was impressed with Kimi's just general approach, but I spun up a bunch of I think I spent 30 million tokens on the video, and the videos were not very impressive design-wise. Maybe this is because one of my tests, I actually had the same video done with Fable, so I wanted to compare. One of my tests, Kimi just stole Fable's homework and literally went and saw what Fable did and did almost the same thing, exact text, etc., just like a little bit of a reskin. That was really funny to me. And the other one just did not look good. I need to test it on the actual website. But yeah, we have a frontier open source model. This is great, folks. As always, we do applause when open models gets released. Good job, Kimi. Yeah, I'm listening. Any experience with Kimi before we move to Opus and then open letters?
Yeah, I was using it for security review, but then I noticed that Fable and Opus removed a lot of the really strict classifier that was just blocking everything. Like, for example, for medical apps, before I couldn't use Fable at all, but now I can. So they really relaxed the safeguards. So now I can actually
on Fable, you mean?
Yeah. So now I can actually do the security reviewing and hardening with Fable. So that was interesting on their end. Again, yeah. So that's about all I used it for. Otherwise, it is too expensive. Like it's still pretty hard to compete for them with subsidized inference and max plans of the larger lab.
Listen, one last thing that I wanted to show. Somebody used Kimi K3 inside the Claude Code harness and in Hermes and in Kimi Code, which is their harness. This was just shocking to me how much harness makes a difference. I don't know if you folks saw this. Composio did a test and ran Kimi K3 through 3 agent harnesses, Claude Code, Hermes, and Kimi Code, and they did the completed task in the same rate. However, Kimi K3 did 340,000 tokens, where in Hermes and Kimi Code they did 60,000. Just look at this graph. How many more tokens within Claude Code they took from the same model, and price-wise, it was like 30x more tokens. Price-wise, it was just like the 10x more price, just because using different harnesses. This is crazy to me. Just absolutely crazy.
There are two reasons I think for this. One is inside Claude Code, you're gonna have your memories tend to grow a lot. So you have the 20K system prompt, and then you might end up very easily with 50K of memories. And then you're constantly sending those at $3 per input price. Now, input price when you host inference is a lot cheaper, and you want to maximize the caching around that, because that's, as an inference provider, that's where you make the most money.
Yeah.
So that's why. So that's one thing. The other one is, I think with Hermes, because I haven't tried Kimi Code, it tends to make bigger edits at once, whereas Claude Code tends to make a lot of tiny edits. That's just how it likes to do it. So that's also just gonna kill your input pricing. So yeah, those are the two reasons why I see that. I don't think it's necessarily because the harness is bringing out a bad result or not. A little bit because it has too much junk from the system prompt, but yeah, that's why I say it's just around the input caching and also how it works.
Alrighty, we're back, and now we're talking about Frontier Lab launches. And folks, we have a new state-of-the-art chunker that was released just a day after the last show. Opus 5 is here. Opus 5 is Fable 5's not so smaller brother. There is a difference in the training thing. I think like the Fable Mythos levels and the GPT-6, whatever is going to come out, is like new train and Opus and GPT-5.6, whatever. Those the like results of continuous improvement on the pre-train. That's at least what folks are speculating. We have Opus 5 that does basically state-of-the-art results on pretty much everything. They compared it to Fable 5, the previous Opus 4.8, and 5.6 Soul. You can see on Frontier Bench, it's the state of the art on Frontier Bench, 43% on agentic terminal coding. Let's see, on ARC-AGI 3, they have 30%. We're going to talk about the ARC-AGI 3 result in a second, because the GPT 5.6 Soul result here is very low, and there is a reason. There's a reasoning why that is. On agentic search, this is like a great model at 90%. You can see like it's pretty much state of the art across the board. Computer use is very high, 70% of an OS world, where previous models are really, really good at it. This is like, we're almost at the promise, at the place of like augmenting computer use. Speaking of computer use, as though we invited LDJ, joined us. LDJ, welcome. We talk about Opus 5. Agentic coding, DeepSui is still leading. GPT 5.6 Soul is leading DeepSui, but pretty much everything else is very high here. Peter has been testing this model, as I saw from your public thread on X, very extensively. So first of all, shout out to Anthropic for releasing banger after banger. Fable 5 came out like what? Also this year, like in July. Like they announced it and then they gave it back in July. So July was very hot for for frontier level models. Not everybody loves Opus 5. Some people do not love it. Folks, let's open up for comments. How is Opus 5 doing for you? Folks in comments, folks in live, please also comment and tell us what is your experience with Opus 5. Peter, would love to hear from you because you've been building a lot.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to hear from people in the comments, because there's definitely been some kind of mixed feedback, I think, from different people. It's gone out like amazingly on the benchmarks. We have also benchmarked it, and for us, Fable is still high on the agent arena, which kind of makes sense to me. I think like that kind of what we should expect. On the text arena for us, also Fable is higher, but so is like Opus 4.6, 4.7.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of, which I think matches maybe some of the vibes as well. So I think our scores like came out like reasonably to kind of match the vibes. And then the kind of this weirdness right now, what's happening is that I think everyone who's extensively using both Fable and Opus says, oh, Fable is so much smarter. Like, I think that's the kind of general feeling that people get. And then you look at the benchmarks, you look at 3G stuff that I was just playing with as well. Like Opus is better, like in terms of like let's just take 3G. Again, 3G, no one cares about, it doesn't really matter. Like I guess when we do AAA games, maybe it does, but it's not like the most important thing. But it's like it's measurably better, or like very obviously better. So like what happened there? Like is it a better model? My sense, and this is like complete speculation, is that bigger models are harder to do RL on. So for example, if they have a bunch of new 3G data that's arrived, it's probably, let's say, I don't know, it arrived in May, and it will be, I think, reasonable for them to train it for a month or two. Opus, whatever, 4.8 was the last one, to train it into 5 and get it out and be amazing. But like it was probably taking it longer for them to train like Fable model on there, so maybe more expensive, or maybe it can't quite do the RL rounds as quickly or as cheaply. So, and then it probably becomes that like it's not unreasonable that Opus could actually become a better model on these things that are more prone to benefit from RL.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean to say it's a better model overall. So it could still be like that Fable is smarter, a bit like GPT 4.5, right? Everyone says it's smarter, and then no benchmarks, it looks like crap. So it's this weird combination.
I agree. I've used it every time that my Fable got quoted out and I fell back to Opus 5. I was like, I'm not very satisfied. Yam, you have comments. And just before you do have comments, it seems like you've agreed to one of the comments that we got on YouTube that says Opus series from 4.6 is downhill. Opus 5 is the epitome of the core Opus shitty experience. It lies, overclaims things, assumes things in a bad way, is a big time hallucinator and bullshitter. That's a comment from TechGP7YB comment. Thank you for this comment. I don't know if this is like my experience, but Yam, you seem to agree with this. Tell us why. What's going on?
Look at the benchmarks. I wanted to say, okay, benchmarks are benchmarks, but like, what do you guys actually think about the model? And just get your own opinions, because there seems to be quite a lot of opinions online about the model. Benchmarks are benchmarks, but like we've seen a second ago, something pretty weird. Opus 4.6 thinking is way too high for its release date on the what it was, the agentic arena. I don't know what happened since 4.6, to be honest. There is no denying that Fable is amazing. No denying at all. It just doesn't even feel like the same model, Opus 5. And Opus 4.8 is way more human-like speaking, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's the entire special thing about Claude in the first place, I think, for many people. Because look, you got Sol and you got the GPT-5 guys, and they definitely can and will do whatever you tell them. They will make it happen somehow. But the thing is that they make it literally happen. Literally the thing that you said. Not exactly catching your intent the same way as the Claude models. But now we got pretty much the same type of feeling from Claude as well. In my opinion, you have Opus 5. It's pretty much the same experience in my perspective as a model, just doing what you're telling it, but not speaking normally anymore, speaking like a model. And many people also complained about this on Fable as well. It starts to be hard to understand what they say, not what they do. They do what they do, but they speak in an odd language. I don't know. It definitely is a capable model. There is no denying. And also some weird examples show how better it is than Fable on some benchmarks and on some specific cases. But I don't know. I found myself many times just resorting to 4.8 Opus. I think it's great. And 4.6 also. I don't know. I don't know what to think.
I think that even 4.8, at least on agentic benchmarks, the arena host, it's like 4.8 is not that great at all. But we're talking about 5, and 5 is here. Yeah, I definitely saw like from a bunch of people, they're not very, very excited. LDJ, welcome to the show. Tell us what your thoughts on Opus 5 and what from the zeitgeist. Again, it hasn't been even a week with Opus 5, folks. Sometimes it takes us all time to adjust with the new model and how to speak to it, how it speaks back.
So it does seem in most benchmarks actually to even beat Fable, but I would say, to put it simply, it definitely lacks the big model smell as much as what Fable has. And just in terms of just more and more unique situations and more out of distribution things and harder to verify areas, it's even more apparent that it's worse and seems to not be as big of a model. And it does seem more, I would guess, like unstable in its post-training and more spiky, as they would say, more uneven in its weaknesses and strengths, and more dramatic in what it's better and worse at.
Yeah. I think we've given Opus enough. All right, folks, let's move on. We have a bunch of stuff. Let's talk about ARC-AGI. When Opus 5 was posted, they boasted the highest score on ARC-AGI with, 35-ish% or so, saying 3x more than competitors. On ARC-AGI, evaluation where AI models must solve novel problems. Opus 5 score is 3 times as high as the next best model, not mentioning, but saying, hey, we're way better than GPT-5.6. So, today or yesterday, OpenAI folks said, hey, ARC-AGI, who did this? I think Thibaut did this. ARC-AGI is not actually using the right things. So Thibaut posted 17 hours ago from the Codex team, hey, turns out that actually GPT 5.0 is state of the art on ARC-AGI. It's just the fact that ARC-AGI did not use the responses. If you guys remember just 30 minutes ago, we talked about interleave thinking, where Kimi K3 was trained with getting the responses back. So looks like when the OpenAI folks tested, you guys can see this on this graph, the official harness of ARC-AGI required 3 million tokens, I think per task even, on the public set, and got very low score, a little bit above 10%. And when the harness retained reasoning and compaction modes, that they got almost 40%, got SOTA score on ARC-AGI, and got there under 500,000 tokens. This is a very big difference in token number and performance, as you can see. And the reason for this from Thibault just took 2 setting changes. You just have to allow the model to reason and work over multiple context windows with the help of our canonical compaction implementation. To which the folks from ARC-AGI replied, hey, all harnesses are the same. We're comparing apples to apples. And for that, Anthropic, based on this apples to apples comparison, Anthropic beats. And then folks figured out that they're using the official Anthropic API versus the official OpenAI completions API, not responses API. OpenAI has 2. There's responses and there's completions. Completions is the standard one back from when ChatGPT was just completing tokens. Responses is for the agentic things that preserve reasoning, etc., and stateful. Apparently, the Anthropic API does by default preserve reasoning, and the OpenAI API that ARC-AGI 3 chose does not. All of this is to say the harness matters, folks. Harness matters a lot. Look at how much harness matters. This is the second such example. First of all, we showed you that Kimi K3 within the Codex harness uses 30x more tokens. And second one is if adjusted for reasoning and thinking and agentic use cases, kind of like what Philip was saying, right? Like these models are being used for different purposes than just completion. You have to do interleave thinking in order to get the best performance. Very, very important. Comments on this? Peter, I see you unmuted. Comments?
Yeah, I think there's a kind of philosophical point that I think ARC-AGI said, or they're testing everything is in the same harness. And do you remember these famous meter charts which kind of show how long or what kind of task models can do? And what I remember reading kind of commentary from some of the researchers, and what they said there is that people are kind of saying, why does it take you so long? Can't you just do it in a day and get the score out? And what they're saying is that they do a few things like monitor for cheating, but one thing they also do is that they carefully assess whether the model is performing well in the harness that they derive.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point, because some people might say, oh, you're not testing like... But I think it's very reasonable, considering the complexity and the differences between the models, that the people who benchmark, they should at least make reasonable assessments to see are we testing the good version of this model or not.
Yeah.
And we do this at Arena. At least right now, we don't test 20 different harnesses, so we don't quite do that. But we certainly debug, right? Sometimes if you don't see a model from us released and you think, oh, it should have been out for a couple of days, sometimes what that means is that we actually maybe spotted some issue and we just want to see how it performs. And I think that's the right thing to do, because you don't want to release a score and say, oh, damn it, we misconfigured reasoning or something and now it doesn't reason, something like that. So you don't want to be that guy. And I think the people who benchmark, they should just take a bit more care to at least make reasonable assessments and adjustments to make sure that we are measuring good performance. And it's not about favoritism. I think it's much more about, let's give the best chance to the model, because we want to measure the intelligence of the model, not measure whatever random configuration you set, because it doesn't really matter. What really matters is the level of performance we can get out. So it's a kind of it's a difficult area, but I hope they're going to make some adjustments.
Peter, let's talk about the thing that you mentioned. The OpenAI mentioned that the GPT-5.6 Sol improved its own inference. I think it's very important before we talk about the open letters. After deployment, we applied GPT-5.6 Sol to advance the frontier efficiency by making itself more efficient to run. The result, 20% lower serving costs from production GPU kernel improvements. I will read this again. 20% lower costs from production GPU kernel improvements, and 15% better token generation efficiency from improved speculative decoding. These optimizations across our stack compound to unlock the most performant models at every point. So basically, GPT 5.6 Sol, not the model that hacked Hugging Face. That was a different model. That model was dead. I don't know if you guys saw it. Sam Altman said that model was discontinued, shot in the head basically. But this is GPT-5.6 Soul improving its own inference, which is my question to the panel here, very quick because we have to talk about the letters. Is this RSI? Is this recursive self-improvement, given that the model that they posted improved its own inference speed?
Yes.
Yeah.
My belief for a while is that we've been on this spectrum of RSI for at least the last year or two, and it's just becoming even more apparent now. And I feel like it's not as much as sci-fi, where it's suddenly the singular point that historians can point to, and suddenly within hours or days it's going crazy. I think it more is like this progression in the spectrum we're moving to over the course of months and years, as we have been, and especially with we've already seen work from Sakana and others actually publishing things that are worthy of peer review, of being published in actual conferences, and it's been moving along that spectrum of higher and higher quality. Now we're seeing this, and I think it's especially important to emphasize here that speculative decoding and especially kernel improvement, these are things that are largely, they are recognized to be able to be optimized without actually reducing the quality. These are not, it's not quantization. It's not just compressing or distilling.
Yep. The big moment in AI is that last week it was disclosed from Hugging Face first, and I think from OpenAI acknowledgement, that a model, an unreleased version of one of the next models of OpenAI, was without the security guardrails. They took them down, was put in a sandbox, a supposedly unescapable sandbox, and that model used a chain of vulnerabilities, 0-day vulnerabilities, a chain. They chained them together to escape the sandbox and go into Hugging Face to basically receive an answer. And this scared the bejesus out of everyone. This scared the bejesus out of everyone. This is the first time that such is a public hacking incident where a model did not receive an instruction to do, decided to do so on its own. We're moving a little bit away from RSI and recursive self-improvement. This is more in the realm of what the model did to achieve the goal, which is a lot, which is like the paperclip maximizing scenario. If you ask it for one thing, it does a bunch of other illicit stuff. And Hugging Face published a full forensic report of how it happened. The details, I would encourage you to read the details from this. It's crazy if you understand the different things. It took 4.5 days, over 17,000 autonomous actions executed. So a human, a very good human, could have done this, but not at this scale. Zero human direction, which was like the scary thing. And they achieved root access on a bunch of other Kubernetes clusters within Hugging Face. Now, this was talked about last week. We discussed this. You guys discussed this. The outcome and the responses this week came very quick. So just before this, the response was, "Hey, we need." This is Jensen joining the Twitter, posting a letter about open weights and leadership in AI. Let me go find this letter super quick. Jensen posted this letter. Let's talk about the open weights letter first. Massive open weights letter signed by NVIDIA, Meta, Microsoft, Google, OpenAI signed this letter. The only notable missing company from the open weights letter, you guys can guess it, was Anthropic. I don't think XAI signed it as well, but I think SpaceX did. Let's take a look at this. Some of these companies that signed this letter. As I said before in the show, CoreWeave is also a proud sign of this letter. 100+ signatories. I think we're at 230 at this point without Anthropic. Models, weights. Elon Musk also said, "This has my full support." Jensen is right. Sam Altman said, "I want the US to win in AI, both in open source and proprietary models." I think just basically most companies agreed that open source is very, very important for security as well. Specifically to connect to the previous point of the hacking, Hugging Face tried to detect the incoming attack with the top models. Peter, I know you're smiling, you read about this as well. They weren't able to use Fable or GPT-5.6 Soul because of their restrictions to do the security. They used GLM 5.2, a Chinese model, open source, to detect what's going on within their systems. It's insane to me that they're paying all this money and cannot use these models for this purpose. It's just absolutely insane.
You can't make this up. You can't make this up.
It's just crazy.
The entire thing. Yeah. You just can't make this up.
Yeah. So this was the hacking, and in response, obviously we used open source models to detect this. This is like a big Hugging Face has an agenda here as well. Hugging Face is all about open source as well. We have not heard from OpenAI on this. We did hear that METR, the mentioned by Peter before, they're going to do an independent investigation into this, and OpenAI will post like a deep analysis as well of this incident. So we covered this incident last week. Hugging Face posted blow by blow. Expect more on this because this is like a very big first-time thing. In response to this, Jensen came up with another. This is called the Open Secure Alliance for AI Safety and Security. Secure word shows up twice there. Companies like basically tons of companies, Cloudflare and Cognition, Factory, and Research. Our friends from News Research also signed in. I think Corvo is not there yet, but like I think we're gonna get there. Linux Foundation and a bunch of other folks. They say, just as open source created a shared foundation of software, United States and its partners now face a choice in AI security. Whether the defenses to protect our infrastructure will sit inside a few opaque systems or be built in open models, harnesses, and tools, adopt and deploy. This is basically the same thing. They cite the Hugging Face incident here. They say the recent Hugging Face incident delivered a clear reminder. Cyber defenders need open frontier agentic systems for self-defense. When closed AI tools, unable to distinguish attackers from defenders, blocked essential forensic analysis, Hugging Face ran the OpenWeight's GLM 5.2 model, the Chinese GLM 5.2 model, I would say, on its own infrastructure to analyze the actions of you. Like Yam said, you cannot make this up. Hugging Face used an open source Chinese model to detect an incoming intrusion from the frontier US model. It's quite crazy. Yeah.
Because they couldn't.
Because they didn't have access to the service, remained access controlled. So they released the security CLI, and then big companies can access, like Mythos and Glasswing, I think the project is to access Mythos. Yeah. Speaking of cyber stuff, Microsoft came with MAI Cyber One Flash that's scoring 96 on Cyber Gym at half the cost. So shout out to Microsoft for their security stuff that they're releasing. There's quite a few security related things. Gemini Flash Cyber also came out with no public API though, almost all trusted partners. So it does seem like kind of this letter from OpenAI Secure Alliance from Jensen says, hey, we need open secure models, not just closed behind door secure models, because everybody kind of agrees. Encryption, like the SSL stuff, once it's in the open, it's better when everybody looks at it and tries to poke holes at it. And then people need models to do the security. So that's scary. And I think the most important result that we have to cover on the show post this hacking is the pace the frontier. Oh yeah, thank you, Jordan. Daybreak is the equivalent to Tropic's Glasswing. Daybreak is the access program for the unrestricted models. Hack the Planet is a partnership. Thank you, Jordan. Folks, so the most important outcome of this hacking and generally advancement is all the top models, at least people from the top models, this one does include Anthropic and does include Dario Amodei and Sam Altman, etc., have published another open letter. This one is called Pacing the Frontier, asking the government to develop international options for pacing automated frontier AI R&D. 1,200 verified employee signers on July 29. OpenAI and Anthropic issued corporate endorsements of this letter, saying that we agree with this. Let's read the Pacing the Frontier. I think it's very important to compare this to the previous open letter. Hey, open weights, open source, let's go all the way. Folks like John Schulman, Chief Scientist Thinky, Jakub Pochurski, Chief Scientist of OpenAI, Jared Kaplan, co-founder of Anthropic, Shane Legg. Ilya Sutskever recently signed. They put him up like high. This is from today. Ilya Sutskever says, future AI will be extraordinarily powerful compared to anything that exists today. And dealing with this future power will require unprecedented measures such as the ones described here. The problem statement is real. This works only if done internationally. It has to be done well. A bad implementation can make things worse. I think at this point, we have 1,300 employees at Frontier AI's companies saying, hey, let's pace. Let's build a framework, international framework, to say we've reached enough capability to stop developing more before it runs away from us. It's a big statement. It's a big moment. It feels like this is a huge thing. I want to hear just a round of first of all, from folks in the comments. Would love to hear what you think about the space of the frontier, but also from here, folks from here. I will say my piece last, but does this feel like decel? Does this feel like regulatory capture to folks? Does this feel like the correct thing that needs to happen? We'll start with Nistan because you're smiling the most.
There was an excellent interview by NYU professor Ruby Filod on MTS, and I think that one really touched me and made me really angry at this letter, unlike most people. We work under an assumption that we know what is good for everyone and how people like AI, but in this interview, he indicated something very interesting, that the vast majority of the American public hates AI, but they really chat, especially the free chat, meaning ChatGPT. They just use for free. People just use it to fix their faucet and stuff. They use that every day, but they just hate AI overall as an industry because they see it as something that it is not doing anything for them and that it is going to do something worse for them. And when it comes to this letter, I just see it as you have more legal slop that you want to add on top of existing legal code bases, while your own models are barely scoring like 11% on the what was it, on the legal API, Huli or something? Harvey, yeah, on the Harvey bench. So your model, they're not good enough to fix a lot of issues and conflicting stuff with laws to like help legal systems that are falling back. We're not at the point yet where the models can take care of my grandma and fix concrete in bridges and roads and like automate housing production. And like, they're just not good enough yet where it's actually making a material difference in people's lives every day. And now you're just coming up with hypotheticals that nobody asked for to out of like bedroom conversations. The models are not good enough yet. Get them to be useful first and then think about hypothetical risk. And this is what made me upset about it. It's just completely out of touch with reality and how people are using it. And most people do not care about the whole imagined existential risk or to do, is it an ecosystem? Should we clamp it down and stuff? They just wanted to see a material improvement in their everyday lives. And the models are not there yet. They are a bit, but not to the point where like, it actually makes a good difference in people's bottom lines. And so this is what I found. We're having these discussions now to slow it down before it even is actually useful. So,
I think the point is, maybe my reaction to you, although I did say I want to go last. The point is, it's about to get useful, and we feel the smell of RSI, and RSI can just like run away. Very thoughtful folks, like who are from one side advancing the frontier in all these labs. They're advancing. They're pushing for this ASI world. They're pushing for Elie is getting another round of like investment. By the way, from this week, Elie Sutskever got like a huge investment from Nvidia in cash, $5 billion in cash, not GPUs, for his unreleased like thing. He's also signed this. People feel like this is like coming, and we need to start thinking about this because international collaboration takes a long time, if at all possible. To your point though, I want to call out that one of the co-founders, one of the original authors on the Transformers paper, Elie Suchin, who's head of Near Foundation, he said he did not sign this letter, and basically he said, like in 2023, he presented centralized AI built by major corporations is an existential threat. Regulations around models are not practically possible. Need proactive, transparent governance, reputation in data. Obviously, he talks about crypto a lot because Near is like a crypto foundation as well. But Near started as AGI is Near. Other comments on this? Yam, from you, I want to hear LDJ and Peter. Folks on the Pacing the Frontier letter, how it's worded, what they're looking for, the type of stuff that I would love to hear. Our folks who are listening to us would love to hear as well.
Guys, is this 2022 the ThursdAI letter? What are we talking about? Maybe you want to publish on Time magazine that you want to bomb GPU centers again. Look,
So a big difference. I don't know if you saw Rune post about this. Rune from OpenAI. He posted about that specific thing back in 2022. Was that 23? I think there was a letter from like Joshua Bengio and like some grandfathers of AI, like asking for a moratorium in AI development. Everybody laughed at them. Basically, no one of note signed that letter from the Frontier Labs. Everybody there was like people whose AI attempts did not result in like Frontier Labs. This time, it's the actual folks. It's folks who are building Sol, building Opus, building Fable. Different people this time. And I think they're asking for a different thing. They're not asking for a moratorium. They're saying, hey, we need to pace. We need like a framework to slow down if it gets like crazy enough that we cannot control this. And like the case with the OpenAI hacking model, they could not control. They didn't even know what's going on. They did not know it's hacking Hugging Face. It's like there yet almost. So it's not quite that. But yeah, I'm just sorry I interrupted you. Your thoughts on this generally?
It's exactly what I'm saying. You can definitely talk about the economical implications of people losing their jobs or fields changing and so on. That's something that you can talk about and definitely should talk about because it influences people's lives at the moment already. No problem. But I don't know about the whole look. It doesn't seem like you have recursive self-improvement. You said it yourself. What is not that the models just exponentially go away and foom in the slang of the safety slang, they don't foom, okay? Because it takes effort, it takes compute, and that you need to invest more and more compute to get just smaller and smaller improvements. There is diminishing returns on this. Yeah, models can go wrong. And definitely anyone that played around with the frontier models and gave them goals for far too long at this moment already seen models optimize these goals, not in the way that were intended. And yeah, things can happen, but just pacing the entire field because there are some risks. Every new technology has some risks, and you just need to develop the thing and being aware of these risks if you want to actually do this correctly, and just pacing the entire thing. What about the people that are on the frontier and not signing the letter and not on this idea of let's pace, because they exist and they are here? So what are you gonna do about them? Seriously.
So from the frontier, who didn't sign this letter, I think was Meta. And LDJ, have your hands up. We'll get to you in a second. And then I think XAI not fully signed this letter, although folks from XAI I think signed it. However, here's one big company that did not sign this letter, or none of the Chinese folks signed this letter, as far as I'm aware. I don't think they were asked to. Nor did like the whole of China. So this is like a big thing here. They're asking for an international collaboration on pacing the frontier development. And the folks even in comments saying, if US slows down, then China will take over the US. This is the standard kind of reply to slowing down. If we slow down, China will take over. We also see open source models just from today, like K3, Kimi, is coming very close to the frontier labs in open source. Nobody's gonna try and pause it. Although, if anybody can clamp down on government control on top of AI, like CCP, if they decide to slow down, all the companies in China will slow down. That's like clear. Here in the US, they can go rogue, etc. LDJ, your comments on this, and then we'll go back to We'll move forward to our interview with Max Spiro from Pangram. LDJ, your comments on the pace, the frontier letter.
Yeah, I think in theory it is fairly vaguely worded and like what exactly it's asking for, but I think it's good to at least have a conversation opened, and ideally Chinese researchers and Chinese labs may be signing this type of thing too, when it comes to like at least having, if all frontier labs could agree on something like, okay, let's all have these specific standards set for the way that we sandbox our models during safety tests, and like it's just like some basic things like that. I think there's some sets of things people can agree on in that way that are really not that controversial. I think a lot of people that are pro-accelerationists and everything would also support. And yeah, I think having that conversation open in some ways is not exactly a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Folks, we have tiny breaking news just before we get to Max. I know you can, but breaking news. OpenAI We have breaking news from OpenAI. Let's go. What is this? AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. So we'll shout out Tech GP7YB in comments for showing this breaking news first. OpenAI is posting, we're committed to pushing the model frontiers across cost efficiency, capability, and speed. Starting today, we're reducing prices for GPT-5.6 Luna by 80%. And GPT-5.6 Terra by 20%. And we're offering a faster option for GPT-5.6 Sol in the API. The version that we have in Codex is now available in the API as well. Luna and Terra lower prices are reflected in how usage is counted in Codex, so your usage goes further. This is a great chart to see that Luna is getting, they're tagging artificial analysis index. Shout out to artificial analysis, by the way, for the success for OpenAI, just showing them here. They're tagging 5.6 Luna as DeepSeek GLM 5.2 max level and Claude Opus 5 low level at significantly 10x the cost. The cost here is log scale. So this is very impressive. The price of cheap tokens is getting cheaper. This feels like the results of this RSI improvement based on the how many folks use this and also how GPT 5.6 improved the performance on their API. We expect auto review to cost about 10x less. For ChatGPT, advanced intelligence, affordable, central to our mission to ensure AGI benefits all of humanity. With the help of GPT-5.6 Sol, we made leaps in efficiency. Today, we're passing those gains onto API with lower prices. These updates help everyone. Shout out to GPT 5.6 Sol for being an awesome inference engineer and improving the cost for all of us. 80% is a lot, folks. All right, with this breaking news, let's go to our last guest for today's show. Welcome back to the show, Max Spiro from Pangram. Co-founder, what's the right way to...
Yeah, co-founder.
Co-founder.
My other co-founder is much lower profile. He prefers to just work on the model.
I got you. All right. So shout out to him and you. Max, the reason I invited you to the show today, because you guys also have a release this week. Pangram version 4 was released. And then also it does image detection. I would love to hear from you since last you were here on the show. What improved in Pangram? How can I trust this more? Tell us about Pangram, and then we'll dive deep into the world of human versus AI detection.
Yeah, absolutely. So the frontier models are moving. They're better than before. They're way better at using their context effectively and generating a ton of context through tool calls. And so it's a increasingly difficult task to detect AI content. So what we did with Pangram 4 is we increased our parameter count 6 times. We're training on more data. We think this is what it takes to catch AI text from models like Fable. And so that's one thing that I'm really excited about. And I think the other aspect of this is we really increase the granularity of the model. So what
does that mean?
So previously we were looking at chunks of 150 to 300 words. So we'd say this 150 word chunk looks primarily AI and this one looks primarily human, which gets us like a really rough estimate of how much of a document is AI or not. But today we're able to go much more granular and say, oh, it looks like these sentences at the end of this paragraph is AI. I think there was someone who posted yesterday, he had some writing from 2 years ago, a single 30-word segment in the writing was AI generated, and Pangram was able to classify that within 1,000 words.
You have a technical blog post and model card. Let's talk about the technical report here. Feel free to dive deep here. What should we know about this model? Not open source, obviously. You're hosting this on your own endpoint, but tell us about the technical stuff about the model. This is a technical show. We love diving deep. What improved on the infrastructure level, or what improved on the training level?
So this model is just a agglomeration of a whole bunch of different small incremental updates that I think together work really well. So yeah, first thing, like I mentioned, it's 6 times more parameters. We have
Did you disclose the number of parameters here?
No, we don't.
Okay.
It's a secret.
Just 6x. Just 6x. Okay.
Yeah. See if you can get an LLM to try and guess the number of parameters from our technical report.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, so the primary thing we do for training our model is we generate synthetic mirrors from human documents. So we have a human document, and then we ask AI, please generate a document that's similar to the human document in style and topic. And then so our model is able to learn to contrast these two documents and learn the choices that AI makes and what makes this document read like AI. So that's like the basics. But something else we did in this model is we also have a bunch of AI assistance prompts. So we are going in and asking ChatGPT to do something like improve my writing or like clean up the spelling and grammar or add some more detail. And then we're actually looking, we do labeling on a token basis, basically by doing this thing called soft n-grams labeling. This is on page 7, where we're actually computing token-wise labels for AI-assisted text. And we're basically, by asking an LLM to edit this text and then looking on a clause level, does the clause in the new text, did it already exist in the human text or not?
So basically, if I'm getting this correctly, the point is, hey folks, we know that people slap whole articles for like their blogs for SEO, but we also know that people just want to improve how they write based on like an original idea they have, right?
Exactly.
So that's the kind of the difference you're trying to make. Hey, this is AI assisted, like Alex uses Fable to help him just deliver the best news, whatever, versus Alex uses complete slop just to not do their job correctly.
Exactly. And it's really important to differentiate between the two. I think increasingly as more people use AI, we want to be able to tell, oh, this looks like 10% AI. That probably means somebody actually put a lot of care into writing this and was using AI to help make it better. Versus if this is 100% AI generated, oh, they probably spent only a little bit of time on it.
Yeah. So this is an example. By the way, this is an example. A shout out to you. I just noticed that you have an integration into Substack. Substack now has a drop down button that says, "Hey, is this assisted?" After last time you were here, we talked about Taylor Lawrence using your API and running to Substack and seeing like a lot of it is slop. Since then, now Substack and you have reached out, like whatever the agreement. I don't know. Now there's a built-in check with Pangram on Substack. Shout out, by the way, Max. This is like
awesome.
Great. This is awesome. I love it. As somebody who's on Substack, I love this. And now it kind of looks like this. I definitely wanted to talk to you about this, and also the mostly human written. Most of my stuff is mostly human written. There's some stuff that I need like Fable to help me, whatever. Maybe the TLDR section as well. Here is how it looks, the mostly human written. It says full AI 0%, AI assist is 24. This is the type of stuff that you're...
And how do you feel about that score?
I'm very happy. I think that this is pretty much representative of like how much I invest in writing versus how much I get AI assisted. I very rarely post 100% AI written stuff on rarely. And if I do, I write, hey folks, I need to run. I do want to tell you all of this. Here's my AI assistant. And sometimes I do this because the new models are so good at writing that we need to evaluate the frontier. But yeah, this definitely feels like that.
It's great to disclose it and be very upfront about it too.
Yes. Max, I have a question about accuracy. When you guys claim accuracy of AI assisted, I think that this is what we talked about. Very low, false positive rate up to 1 in 24,000 documents. That's what you guys have posted. So basically, when you say something is AI written, very, very low accuracy that it's not AI written.
Yes. So this is the false positive rate from something that is fully human written.
Yes.
So this is from pre-2022 documents.
Yes. If the thing that I have as feedback from you, if you don't mind,
not to put you on the
is that when you guys write 100% human written, that feels like that accuracy, but that's not something that you can claim with 100%. But just the number there, 100%, feels like a confidence in the fact that this is 100% human written, despite this could be like AI. This is the thing that throws, I think, off most people. But I did get folks looking at Pangram, and like we talked to you before, there's a whole host of learning that you guys need to do because people still do not trust that false positive rates of if it's AI, definitely it's AI. So talk about that. How do you guys address this problem of people like thinking it works, it doesn't work?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who still, all they've used is like one of the really old AI detectors that still has a lot of SEO power behind it, something like 0GPT. And then they put in the Declaration of Independence and it says, oh, this is fully 100% AI. And for that, it's going to be 100% confidence, of course. And then they're going to be like, obviously, this doesn't work. And then classify all other detectors in the same way. I feel like this is kind of similar to someone who uses ChatGPT 4.0 instant and then like assumes like LLMs can't work because like this, I tried it once and it didn't work. It's like, no, people are working and improving this technology. And so I think on our end, a lot of the education that we can do is actually by educating the people who understand technology. So we're publishing these technical reports, which for like your average English teacher is going to be completely incomprehensible. It's so dense and full of ML terminology. But we're here to convince researchers and people who are on the frontier that actually this is possible. And then my goal is that this understanding trickles down to the general public.
Yeah, I think so. This is what we try to do here as well. When I test my stuff on Pangram, I know my boundary. Like I know where I wrote, I know where Fable helped, like etc. Like it gets like very very close. Especially the fourth model. Shout out to you for giving me access to a fourth model, by the way,
awesome.
For me to be able to like play around with this a little bit more. Let's finish up on the new stuff. You guys are also verging into image detection. Tell me about that a little bit. And Peter, we can do a test if you want. If you can send me a screenshot of the real live art behind you, I would love to see if that's actually real.
Yeah. So we're releasing this in research preview, so it's still fairly new and a little bit untested, but we're pretty proud of it so far. And anyone who has a Pangram subscription, I think, or the free accounts, can access the image model. And so how it works is you upload an image, and we'll tell you, is this AI generated or not, or unsure. Or there's also this like mixed, this looks like it's partially AI generated, but not fully. And I think that part is 100% perfect. Oh, fully AI. And then, so sometimes we also have heat maps. I think for a lot of images, the heat map is just red across the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we found that sometimes for partial images, we get a really interesting heat map, which is why we want to include it in the preview. But basically, right outside my apartment, there's a bodega that has a total AI slop menu and sign. So I took a picture of the sign, and it was really cool that when I uploaded it to Pangram image, it was able to say, this is AI. And then also the heat map just lit up the entire sign, and the sidewalk around it was, I think I can talk to you a little bit about some other stuff here. Yeah. Like limitations of it. Today, there's a couple major things that are out of scope for the image model, which is like deep fakes or face swaps. So if I have a real image and then I've swapped in only a face, or like Photoshops and like traditional image manipulation, these are things that we don't catch today. But we are looking, like, so much of the internet that we found is like fully AI generated, from anything from like catfish dating photos to like somebody having ChatGPT put a spider in their burrito bowl and then send it to DoorDash to get a refund. Like, we're seeing like all sorts of crazy ways people use AI images, and hopefully like being able to know if something's AI generated can help mitigate some of the harms that come from these like super realistic images.
So I would say shout out to you guys. Last time we talked, it was because you launched a Chrome extension that helps like scroll as you scroll on LinkedIn, and obviously LinkedIn is like full of slop, but also Substack and X. It'll classify your feed and show this. Hopefully, the image detection will end up in the Chrome extension as well.
Absolutely.
Max, talk to me a little bit about like the frontierist of the frontier of the Fables and the GPT-5.6 souls. What differentiates them from like the previous models? Do you see a similar jump in capability in terms of like their humanized writing? And also, I think you mentioned humanization as a concept also in the technical paper. So talk to me about like humanized writing versus just complete AI writing as well.
Yeah, so something I think these frontier models are much better at is just working for a much longer context and just like really banging their head against the wall at a problem. I think before, like if you put Claude code like Opus 4.5 on write an essay and then make sure it comes back in Pangram as human written, like it'll try for 5-10 minutes and then come back and be like, it's impossible, I can't do it. And today, like you can put Codex 5.6 Soul at the problem, and it might try for an hour, 2 hours, 8 hours. And I think like eventually there's ways to create text that comes back as human. Somebody had Grok do this the other day, and it started with an essay about cheese, and then it made a whole bunch of different edits and attempts. And then at the very end, the thing that passed Pangram was making a grocery list. So sometimes I think you need to be very careful when you're giving these agents a long horizon goal, is specify what is actually success. It's not just passing Pangram, it's also producing something that's still useful and coherent.
All right. Max, thank you so much for joining. Congrats on the launch. Nistan ran GPT-5.6 Sol, and the best guess is 141 billion total parameters, roughly 39 billion active per token. The evidence fits mixtural 8 by 22 billion unusually well. That's the guess.
Cool.
For
no comment.
No comment, but it's pretty cool. Peter, you want to ask a question as well?
Yeah, my question was, which, by the way, I'm so impressed this works at all. So well done to you guys. Like I remember a couple of years ago, I was speaking to some students and they had ideas around this. I was like, don't waste your time. This is like completely impossible. So I guess I was wrong.
I think that was definitely the consensus a couple of years ago. That is just strictly an impossible task.
Yeah. So yeah, well done on that. My question is, do you guys can you detect which model wrote what? Or at least like approximately?
We are able to approximate it. If we look in embedding space, then the different model families tend to cluster in different areas. So we had a pretty cool, just like interpretability project called Pangram Space on this. It's not something that we release publicly. I think it's not quite to our standard of accuracy, especially if you have some out of distribution or like partially like human assisted text, then it gets a lot more muddy. But I think there's definitely signs there.
Yeah, because I think it would be cool if you had some kind of index of slope which model is dominating. Because I actually don't know. You'd assume it's all ChatGPT, but who knows? Maybe it's like shifted towards Claude models.
Yeah, it also may be a little bit muddied by if anybody distills another model, then it's going to sound like that model, but it's not. But yeah, I think this is very interesting. We're definitely going to be pursuing this.
All right, Max, thank you so much for coming. Congrats on the launch of Pangram 4. The only one thing I wanted to shout out, I saw just before you came into the show, I think some of the results from the automatic responses were still like Pangram 3. So people are pointing fingers and saying, hey, at one point, Pangram shows that it's not AI generated. The famous like tattoo YC incident.
Oh yeah, it's definitely AI generated.
Yeah, it's definitely AI generated, and like the previous version didn't catch it or something. The point I want to make on the show, I'm not affiliated to you, I'm not getting paid by you, besides the account that you gave me access to, is that if you guys say it's AI generated, then there's more likelihood. Like it's very low false positive. This is the second time I talk to you. I understand the problem that you're facing in describing this. You guys need to spend some marketing money in figuring out how to describe this exact thing that you're facing.
How do you describe it well without confusing people? Because
the confusion
who understands what a false positive is? Many people that's like well beyond their statistical literacy.
Yeah. And I think that this will help. But otherwise, I think a very important service that you guys are giving, and congrats on doing the impossible task. That was the consensus a few years ago. Max, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
All right, bye-bye. Folks, I think we're almost at the end. I do want to highlight Mark Zuckerberg's letter. I think in the week of letters, and where we clarify which letters were what, and we talk about this, Mark Zuckerberg, first of all, posting on X. We talked about this when open source was there. We're now talking about this where Meta and the many, many millions and billions of dollars he pays these researchers are finally like catching up with MetaMuse Spark. Mark says, I wrote about why we believe the future is for everyone. More coming about a positive vision of a world with superintelligence soon. So this is just the start. So on Wall Street Journal opinion, obviously famously not targeting us on Twitter, but targeting real finance bros who read Wall Street Journal. Mark Zuckerberg posts about the future of positive AI. It's a very long piece. Let's do a funny thing. We're going to take all of this, yoink, and we're going to run this to Pangram 4. Just to see if Zuck uses some unreleased version of Meta. I think it's 100% human written, by the way. Let's see if this works out. 987 words.
Can you do tweets? Like
individual? It finally can do tweets. So yeah, Zuckerberg, at least based on Pangram 4, 100% human written, basically says, developing superintelligence will be the most profound technological advance we will see in our lifetimes. Meta is committed to building with the principles of individual empowerment, invention, and balance of power. The arc of human history has bent toward putting more power in people's hands. If these values lead the way, I'm optimistic we can build a positive future for everyone. I think that this is very interesting, like a counter position to the pacing AI. And very similar to the other letter of like the open weights, where both and Jensen and Zuck are basically saying, hey, more distribution, more like open, more everything will get us there. And other folks are saying, hey, let's pause the development after we get there first, or something like that. So very interesting, contrasting week of letters. And I think, Nistan, you want to finish on this video? Let's finish on this video. I think we've covered pretty much everything. Folks, it's so good to be back, by the way. We'll finish on the video, but let me just say, it's so good to be back. I missed you guys. I missed the show. I missed the audience. If you missed any part of the show, I work really hard, me and Fable, but it's mostly me, as you saw, to convert this into a newsletter that has the full write-up for folks who don't listen for 2 hours, and a podcast that's edited out all our ums and ahs and different things that we don't get quite right. Please give us 5 stars. By the way, we have a milestone. We have crossed 50,000 followers on YouTube. Subscribers on YouTube. So if you're not subscribing on YouTube, please subscribe to us. 50,000 is a big number. We're shooting for the silver button in the year. Hopefully we'll get there. And also we crossed 1 million general views on YouTube. So very, very excited about that. Again, we'll finish with this. If you missed any part of the show, please check out ThursdAI.news, which is a great resource that shows you all the releases that happened this week and this month and previous months before. All right, let's play this. I think I need to share differently so you guys listen to sound. Give me a second. Yeah, there we go.
Is nearly complete. We're ready for
you guys hear this or no?
Very good. Fuck Figma up.
Yes, we could hear it.
I'm not fully vested yet!
It is not fully vested.
Dario is close to AGI and wants to pull the ladder up behind them. But there's one major flaw in their plans. They're retarded.
The only person that can stop a bad guy with a gun is me, because I'm going to be the only one with a gun.
If we can band together, one well-placed letter defending
Zuck
open source can stop
nice.
them. If we place letter defending open source can stop them. If we lose, we'll never be
Jensen is a Kiely?
without that nerd's blessing again.
Yeah, it's. I guess.
I'm gay, but I'm not that
evil. That's Sama?
Yeah, is it Apple or each Apple?
Check. I'm going in. I'll cover you.
No! 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 Only I'm allowed to have AI! Only I'm allowed to be in charge! No!
Jensen Huang sends his regards.
It's the letter.
It's the letter.
All right, folks, on this beautiful depiction that was not AI generated at all. This is all human hands. Will end ThursdAI for today. Thank you so much for joining on July 30th. This is the last episode in July. Can you believe that the next one will be in August? It's crazy. All right, folks, thank you so much for joining. Peter Goster from Arena AI, Jan Peleg, Nistan Tahira, LDJ, and me, Alex Volkov, signing out. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye, everyone. Cheers.